Good afternoon and welcome to the third installment of Business Insights. Today I am joining you from the Wharton Cyber Networking Lab, one of our innovative new spaces in Hartman Hall. Today's presentation is from Mr. Joe Russo, Senior Vice President of Operations at Verizon. Joe began his career with Verizon in 1996 as a Data Services Operations Supervisor for Bell Atlantic. He is responsible for the security, performance, and reliability of Verizon's global networks. He leads a team of expert engineers who operate the best and most reliable wireless and wireline networks. Previously, Joe oversaw Verizon's wireline customer service centers, enterprise service delivery, wholesale operations, and Northeast field operations. Under Joe's leadership, Verizon has realized significant improvements in delivering exceptional customer experiences while reducing operational expenses. Perhaps one of Mr. Russo's most notable accomplishments is his leadership in the development and successful launch of FiOS. Joe earned his Bachelor of Business Administration degree from James Madison University and his MBA from Pace University Lubin School. Joe resides in New Jersey with his wife, Jennifer, and their 2 sons. Please don't forget to utilize the Q&A feature to submit your questions for Joe, who will be joining us live at the end of the presentation. And now I present to you Mr. Joe Russo.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this discussion. I truly appreciate the forum to talk about leadership. It's such an important time right now to have these discussions and learn from each other. Largely, my role here at Verizon is dealing with challenges. My team's day-to-day responsibilities are to make sure that Verizon's network is always on for our customers. In addition to that critically important function, I'm responsible for Verizon's business continuity and emergency management function. As you can imagine, Verizon is really good at leading through challenges. Just last year, we had to activate our emergency response plans 26 times. We were dealing with 11 hurricanes, 8 wildfires, several instances of civil unrest throughout the country, a derecho, and last but not least, a global pandemic. We must be great in times of crisis because our customers rely on our communication services. So I figured I would use this time to describe a little bit about what I think makes us great in leading through challenging times. I have been at Verizon for 26 years, and I believe it all starts with the culture of the company. We have a credo that guides our work. Let me share some lines in that credo that I think are critically important in having the culture to maintain and manage through crisis. We respect and trust one another, communicate openly, candidly, and directly, since any other way is unfair and a waste of time. We voice our opinions and exercise constructive dissent, and then rally around the agreed upon actions with our full support. We work 24/7 because our customers depend on us 24/7. We see crisis and change as opportunities, not threats. We run to a crisis, not away, and change energizes us. The work of building culture is never done, but trust, grit, and embracing change, I believe, serve as the foundation for leading through these challenging times. Fundamentally, I believe people are looking for 4 things during challenging or changing times: stability, trust, hope, and compassion. During this pandemic, trust has been critical. At the early stages of the pandemic, employees needed to trust that their leaders were putting their health and safety first. I would suggest that as leaders, building trust is an everyday job. You must pay attention to everything you do and say, and put a mirror up to make sure that your words and actions are building trust. It's not easy, and I certainly have teammates I trust more than others, but that is when the hard work begins. You have to work to build that trust. I promise you, in times of crisis, having trust with your employees with your coworkers, with your boss will serve you well. One example I often think of, and I suspect many of us are dealing with, is now managing people remotely. It takes a lot of trust to work in this environment, but when you have it, I have seen some really outstanding results from this work at home environment. We at Verizon build on this culture with planning and practice. We develop business continuity plans that define roles, processes, ways of communicating, ways of making decisions, and ways to ensure that those decisions are executed on. As I mentioned before, in our line of work, we have to develop this muscle. Not all companies have to deal with challenges like Verizon, but I would encourage all leaders to periodically think about what types of crisis could impact your business and role play. How would you respond? You will certainly never think of all of the different types of things that could impact you, but the planning and practice will put you in a much better place when challenges present themselves. We certainly did not do much planning for a global pandemic. Most of our business continuity plans are focused on weather events that can impact the reliability of our network. But having robust processes, we were able to leverage those when COVID-19 moved from Asia through Europe and into the United States. For example, we have a defined emergency steering committee. And most of the time, that committee is filled with operations and engineering people who deal with repairing the network for our customers. But we quickly realized those might not be the best people to manage a global pandemic. It was much more of a human crisis. So we changed out committee members with great human resource leaders. We still used the structure and discipline we had practiced, but made sure we had the right people for the situation. I would make the argument that the hardest part of this journey through this global pandemic is ahead of us, not behind us. I quite often say that people very quickly follow leaders when a crisis hits. Getting to a safe, stable place is easy to get people to do. But exiting that crisis, the leadership is harder. Think of a fire in one of your buildings. Certainly you have planned how to get people out of the building, and there are defined leaders during the evacuation process. When that alarm goes off, people know what to do, and they easily follow those leaders to safety. I view this very much like when just over a year ago, with COVID beginning to ramp in the United States, we closed many of our stores and sent our administrative and sales teams home to work. Within 2 weeks, we had 110,000 people working productively from home. But think back to that fire. So now you have everyone out of the building, and unlike most drills that only last a few minutes, this fire really starts to build, and people are outside a long time. People start to adapt and change while they're outside. They're pitching tents, they're getting food delivered, they're finding ways to work, etc. I don't think if those same leaders then decided to give the all clear, everyone would just walk back into the building like nothing happened. People's reality has changed. Now more than ever, our leadership is required. Employee anxiety is real, and you need to help them. We need to recognize their challenges, engage in discussions, and over-communicate. Be transparent in both what your goals are, the company's goals, and what the employees' goals are for this next stage. Those might not exactly match right now, and we need to work through that. Monitor what's happening for those points of inflection that will drive how people see the situation and plan for the what ifs. Set the stage that this is not going to be easy and no one has all the answers. Put people first and maintain that the future is bright and will be a better day tomorrow than it was yesterday. I think if we do this work now, this next stage of the global pandemic will find a great way to really get people in a new working environment that adds to their flexibility and the business benefits. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Joe. So we already have some questions on the books here coming in through the chat. The first one, how does the emergency steering committee at Verizon balance being nimble with making decisions that consider all relevant data, or at least the important data? I guess we're asking about how you know when you have a decision or plan of action that is good enough.
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me first by saying that as part of our business continuity process, we have a team, the Global Event Management Center. They're actually in Cary, North Carolina, a great group of folks. And their job during these crises, when they activate, one of the big roles they have is gathering situational awareness. And as you just mentioned, it's really important for the executive steering committee to understand what is the environment. So we have lots of different feeds that we get from federal, state agencies, from police departments, all giving us information about what's happening. And we exercise that pretty regularly, and we create during every single meeting a situational awareness segment, and that's the first thing we do. So the team gets on and they tell us what's going on, what's the updates from the day before. And the reason we do that is we know that during a time of crisis, you have to make decisions quickly, way more quickly than you normally would. And, I've been through so many of these that most of the time when we do our after action reviews, we kick ourselves for not making certain decisions fast enough. Because we always feel like in the rear view mirror, it was obvious we should have done something sooner than we did. So we're constantly forcing ourselves to make decisions faster, and we have a bias to do so. So I would say that we try very hard to quickly assess the data and the situation, and we have a whole team that just gives us that information on every single meeting. But then we force ourselves to realize we're never going to have all the right information that we want, and we have to make decisions quickly. And we have a bias towards that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the Verizon credo with us. How do you consistently recruit team members who embrace the aspects of culture, including direct communication, respect, and trust, the 24/7 work week, change being something which you would embrace and which is energizing?
Yeah, probably a better question for our HR department who does all the recruiting for us. But, I think it's ingrained in what we do. It's ingrained in our questions that we ask people. It's ingrained in the type of experience that we look for. That's part of, what we feel like is a qualifying person, is that they have to share our values and share our credo. And some of that comes with either experience or maybe the way your life has developed. Some of that comes from working here too. So we don't expect that every person that joins Verizon is going to kind of understand and live and breathe the credo. It's an everyday thing. So we certainly look for people in our recruiting processes that demonstrate to us that they share the core values of Verizon. But we reward credo behaviors. We have a credo award actually that's given out by our chairman, on a frequent basis. But in everything that we do, in our performance agreements, these are the documents that you share every year with your boss. We write in there credo behaviors that we expect employees to demonstrate and see. And we give feedback on whether or not people are demonstrating those behaviors. So it's built into our performance agreements, our performance reviews. It's built into our reward structure. So, people start to live and breathe the credo as you develop as an employee.
Great, thank you. And speaking of employees, we have an insider here. So a former Verizon intern, and
Yep.
they know that a big part of the culture is created by being together and being in the same room, having the informal interaction among coworkers. How have you been able to replicate that in order to maintain that cohesive team? And how have you instructed managers below you to do the same?
Yeah. I see on the chat that comes from Sarah Bowen. It's great to hear from her. I wish she worked for Verizon still, and maybe someday she'll come back, but she was a terrific intern here. Let me start by saying, I don't think we figured it all out yet. We certainly have not figured out that in this virtual environment, how to replicate all the things that you get by being physically together. But we've been doing this now for over a year. So I think we've done a lot of great things. And some of the things are even better. I'll use a recent example. Every year I had a leadership meeting where I would invite people to come together and we would talk about the upcoming year. What are the objectives and goals? What is going to define our success? What do we need to do in order to be successful? And typically I was able to have managers and above attend that meeting because just space limitations and budget limitations to do that. This year we did it virtually. And as a result, I was able to invite all of the leaders in my organization because the space and budgetary constraints aren't there when you're doing something on a virtual Blue Jeans meeting. So that was a benefit. And we had great interaction. We had speakers. Was it the same as physically being together? No, there were some missing components. But were we able to do some things that we never were able to do before because it was in a virtual format? Yes, we were. So I think there were pros and cons of both. We definitely had breakout sessions and some time to interact. We actually had a guest chef come and join us for the evening, and we were able to cook together. So we tried to infuse some physical kind of things into the virtual meeting, which made it fun. But it doesn't necessarily replicate all of the things you get when people are physically together. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out right now. And I mentioned it in the talk I just gave, which is, defining this win-win-win between the employee, the business, and what customers need from us is what we're right now piloting and trying to figure out. I'll use the last question about bringing people on. Onboarding, we have found to be very difficult in this virtual world, right? We're a big company, 130 plus thousand employees. If you're a new employee, understanding Verizon and building the connections between people is hard to do in this virtual world. So there's still a lot of work to do. And I think the future will be a combination of both the physical office space and virtual environments so that we get the best of the flexibility of being at home with some of the best of being together and building culture and meeting people and having impromptu interactions. So we're figuring that out.
And then that's great. And Rob Bales then asked sort of a similar question, but a different stakeholder group. And you talked about customers. How do you convince customers, especially maybe what he's calling the old school customers, or how do you educate them that this remote work and different way of doing business is okay?
Yeah. First, one of our tenants here at Verizon is results matter, right? So I think to some extent you convince your customers, you can convince your employees, you can convince your leadership through your results. And so far, like I've mentioned, our productivity, Our reliability has been very strong in this virtual environment. So I think results matter, number one. Um, there are some things though that you have to very specifically deal with, and every industry I'm sure is a little bit different. Here at Verizon, one of the things we have to make sure our customers are very comfortable with is the security of people working from home. All right, they're entrusting their communication needs with us. We have a lot of very sensitive customers. You can imagine the federal government, banking customers, et cetera, whose data is traversing our network each and every day. So we've put in place some robust security to make sure, and we've demonstrated our security practices to those customers. So that's just one example of many where you have to show your customers exactly how you're doing it and making sure that they're getting the results that they want, and it's done in a way that everyone can really see exactly the steps you're taking with this remote work environment. But I have to admit, I can't believe how fast we have moved to this new digital environment, and I think it has really accelerated the digitalization of many businesses in the past year.
Thank you. And we'll turn our attention away from a global pandemic for just a second.
Okay.
Which everybody would probably welcome. What are some more predictable business disruptions, so beyond natural disasters, global pandemics, that you foresee in the coming years, and specifically for the telecommunications industry?
Yeah, I mean, if you exclude kind of the natural disasters, that would be my first answer. So I'm going to say it anyway. We have seen more and more significant weather events happening across the world, and certainly here in the United States. Our experts predict that trend is going to continue for the near future. So we do a lot of modeling and preparation for the fact that we believe that climate change will continue and extreme weather conditions will continue to ramp. We look at where we have equipment, we look at how to harden that equipment, we look at how to recover quickly because of those events. So that is absolutely one of the big things. I don't want to get too political necessarily in this discussion, but political events have also ramped up. Social events have also ramped up. And I think we have to acknowledge that here in the United States, at least, we've seen a bit of a polarization starting to happen, both politically and socially. By the way, I hope it's all for good, and we're driving towards really good change happening around equality and other really important issues. But that tends to lead to those kind of events impacting our business as well. We have stores on virtually every corner, and we need to keep those employees safe. We need to make sure that we could serve those communities. So when you have these kind of political and social events, that's a growing trend as well, that we certainly have seen and are continuing to prepare for.
Absolutely, thank you. Now we're going to go back to the pandemic for a second. Okay. So as Verizon announced when they will be bringing back remote employees, and then to follow up on that, what types of roles may stay remote indefinitely as you think about your business going forward?
Yeah, and it's a opportune day for us here, because just yesterday we started our what we call work forward pilots. So we don't anticipate that we will have any big announcement when we'll be kind of bringing back employees. We think that this is an evolution, one that we will evolve into and develop with our employees and with the business to find that win-win-win I talked about before. So certain roles we have already announced that they will be permanent work from home. We did that probably 6 months ago now for many of our call center roles and technical support roles. So these are folks that the need for them to be in an office was so minimal, if nothing at all, that we decided that we were just going to permanently allow them to work from home. So about 6 months ago, we did that with several thousand employees. And there are some employees here at Verizon that, since the pandemic began, have been working out in the field, in customers' locations, because we have to maintain our network 24/7. And as a result, their jobs required them to do so. So even though for a short period of time, we stopped going into customers' homes until we figured out a safe way to do that, or we had our stores closed until we figured out a good way to do that, we've now gotten past all of that. So we have retail employees and field technicians who are our front line and have been out in the public and working to maintain services and provide connectivity for our customers. But then the middle group of people we're calling hybrid now. And that's all about working both at home and having your home office be kind of part of your office environment, and having a place where you could go and be with other employees. And we suspect that this will be a good chunk of our employees that'll be kind of in this hybrid mode. And these pilots that we just kicked off yesterday are to try and understand, what tools do we need? What education do we need? How do we lead these hybrid employees? And I think it's going to be the whole spectrum. Some employees will very rarely go into the office, and some of these hybrid employees may be in the office 2-3 days a week. And I think it's going to really depend on their job and the needs of that job, and where it falls on that spectrum. So right now we kicked off our pilots for those hybrid employees to try and understand, how do we create the best experience for them, for the business, and for our customers.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more question. And this one, if you think about, the events of the last, 12, 14 months, or however many it's been now, I guess we're into about 13 months, really.
Yeah.
Clearly, Verizon is going to emerge probably a stronger company than they were even before. Can you think about your own leadership style and sort of the characteristics? So this puts you on the spot a little bit, but your own leadership style, is there something that you can point to where you say that definitely had an impact in moving this this team forward and coming out of this okay?
Yeah, I would say the attribute that I work the most on, because I think it's the most important, and really I'm going to say two. I mentioned it in the talk: building trust and having empathy. And to me, those two things are really important in times like the past 13 months, because it creates the right cycle, in my opinion, between you as a leader and your employees. And that cycle is one where you trust them, they trust you. You can then create open dialogue. You can talk about issues. You can make sure that things that are bothering them, concerning you as the leader or representing the business, can be openly discussed. And then if you're openly discussing these issues, you can resolve them. And that's the cycle that I want to create, right? Which is, we have the openness, the trust, we can have the right discussions, we can then come to the right conclusions and decisions to move the business forward. And to me, as a leader, focusing on that trust and empathy and approachability is what I think you need in this kind of situation.
Sure. So we can't wait till the global pandemic to practice those skills.
That's right. You certainly can. It's probably too late then, right, Michael? That's right. It's too late.
Well, very good. Well, hey, Joe, I want to thank you. The presentation was really engaging, and my favorite part of these is the follow-up questions. And so thank you so much. And I know that our audience is so thankful for everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be part of this group, and I'm so glad the College of Business is doing them. Um, I watched the first two, and they were super. I hope folks got a little bit out of this talk as well, and I look forward to the next one next week.
Thank you. I think they sure did. And speaking of next week, I think we have a slide here. Don't forget to join us next week for our presentation, and you can use the QR code here to find out what's coming up with our speakers. So until next week, we wish you well, and we'll see you then.